What's up, YouTube? And welcome to my pickups video for the month of May 2020. What can I say? It's been a strange few months, the last few months, but this month overall was quite a bit better for pickups than I've had for a while. And really, I would say that's due to some of our stores in town just slowly starting to reopen, maybe with limited capacity, and offering some few other options to game hunt locally. So that's been a big benefit. One of the other things that caused a lot of the pickups for this month is there was a game store about 100 miles away from home that was actually going out of business. Probably a victim of the virus. They had 2 locations. They're now going to go down to 1 location. But due to that, they were doing a closeout of many of the games in their first location. So I headed down there earlier this month and was able to get quite a few things for the collection through that. So we'll go ahead and kick off. I'm going to talk a lot about Sony games this month. It was a heavy month for PlayStation pickups for all the PlayStation series systems. And actually got quite a few games for PS1, a system that I'd really slowed down on just because I thought I had just about everything I wanted for the system. But overall, still found a few things that I wanted to get. So we'll go ahead and go through PS1 games to start. First one of these is one that's kind of timely, just with what's in the news with the new Tony Hawk remake coming out for the PS4 and probably other systems too. I think it's a remake of Part 1 and Part 2. And I realized that my PS1 collection does not have the original Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, which is probably a little bit of a crime considering this was a signature game for the system. Reason for that's pretty clear. I actually own Tony Hawk's Part 1 through 4, which are kind of like the classic releases, but they're all spread out over different systems. So Part 1 and 2 I own on the Dreamcast, and those are the 2 that I primarily played. But definitely have a lot of respect for this PS1 version because this was the original, the origin of the whole series. So nice to get a clean black label copy of this in the collection. I've actually been playing it a little bit and definitely, appreciate this series. I think the original releases, until it got a little watered down, are well worth owning. Also picked up Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3 for the PS1, so I still need 2 and 4 to have all 4 of them. But this one is kind of like Bizarro World for me because I played this one extensively on the GameCube, and I think it was one of the very first GameCube games I ever bought. And this PS1 version is very different. It was a small developer named Shaba that did this port to the PS1, so definitely didn't get the full love of the other Neversoft releases that were intended primarily for certain consoles. But interesting to see this, brought to the PS1. They definitely had to water down quite a few things because this one was the first one that was for the next generation of systems primarily. But interesting to play this as well. And I don't know, just checking it out from a different perspective because I had no history with that game, at least on the PS1. The next game I want to talk about is one that I failed you on, and I do apologize greatly for that. Nobody actually called me on this, but it was a big miss for one of the videos I put out over the last month. And I did a video on all the PS1 Taito-made subset games for the US market. And I totally missed this game in that subset. This is Darius, a great shooter for the PS1. And the only explanation I can give to that is when I made that video, I went very carefully through my PS1 shelf, thinking about all the stuff that Taito had made, and this game never even crossed my mind that it was missing from my PS1 collection. The story with this, the only way I can think about it is I owned this very early in my PS1 collecting days. I also owned the Japanese release of it, and I think when the US version started to go up in price, I just sold that version off, and then just figured I'd keep playing the Japanese one. And then one day I went through my Japanese games, and I started selling off some of the games for that, and I said, well, I don't need this, I've got the US version of it, so I sold my Japanese version, and suddenly I had no versions of Darius. So my local friend hooked me up with this from his private collection. It's a very, very clean copy. And now I can say that my Taito US PS1 subset is complete, and you can just add this as a little addendum to that last video if you had a chance to check that one out. So definitely recommend this game. It's a great shooter for your PS1. Let's look at some more PS1 stuff I picked up. I got the 3rd Rampage series game that came out for the system. This one's probably the most difficult one to find. I think this one had a pretty low profile because it came out somewhat late in the system's life, and that is Rampage Through Time. I can obviously respect the original Rampage arcade game. I haven't really played a lot of these midway, series where they brought it back, games that came out during this era. So I'll have to check this one out, see if it's any good, but I do know it's kind of a difficult one to find for the PS1. I also got another one of these weird Dracula games that came out. These are 2-disc games that come in kind of a funky single case. And this is Dracula: The Last Sanctuary. There's also a separate Dracula game that has different artwork and slightly different. I think these were primarily PC games, so they were like adventure games that got brought to the PS1. Came out also pretty late in the system life, so I just kind of think they're an interesting curiosity. Nothing too hard to get, but, you know, something that's kind of unique for the system. The next one I got is one that I probably should have owned a long time ago, but this is a well-known PS1 RPG, and that is Dragon Warrior 7. This was really the first Dragon Warrior we got since Part 4 on the NES in the US, so it kind of brought the series back to the point it is today, where we get several Dragon Warrior games in the US. Obviously a series that has been massively popular in Japan for many, many years, and just never really took off in the US the same way that like Final Fantasy did. So interested in checking this out. I can only say my Dragon Warrior experience is like those NES games, and they're a little dry, to be honest. But I would hope that this one's quite a bit better, so I'm looking forward to checking that out when I get some time. Hopefully see how that is. And then the last game I got for PS1 is another one that's a very popular game. I just never owned this or the sequel, and that is Fear Effect. This is a 4-disc game, so I know it's very heavy on the cinemas. I remember this game was very much in the news when it came out because it has a lesbian protagonist, which was crazy for the year 1999 or whatever year it was. But obviously this game is probably not nearly as talked about these days, and I don't really think that series is still going in any way, shape, or form. But interested in checking this out. If I like it, I'll probably also get Fear Effect 2, because they're pretty easily available, but just never really got deep into that series. So you can let me know if that's one that you've played. Alright, next we'll move to PS2 games, and I got a few of those as well. So the first one of these I just got, and I haven't had a chance to play this yet, but I got a very nice condition copy of Eternal Poison by Atlas for the system, and this has a separate soundtrack CD that's also included with it too, so a nice little bundle pack there. Obviously not a series that I'm aware of. There may be other games in the series, but I'm not sure, and it was developed by a company called Flight Plan in Japan, so interested in playing this obviously over the next month and checking it out. What I have been playing, and much more than I expected when I bought this, is PS2 GunCon II light gun games. And what brought that on is I got this big box set for Time Crisis 3. And this was kind of interesting. I got this at my local used game store, and it had obviously the big box. This is a variant of the big box, which I didn't even realize existed. So most of the GunCon boxes, big boxes for PS1 and PS2 come with one gun. This one actually is a variant that has 2 guns in the box. So when I got this had the big box, obviously, and then the 2 guns inside, but no game. It was missing the game, and they were selling it for $10, so I figured I couldn't really pass on that. I did already have one GunCon 2, but I'd really never messed around with it, and I figured out why once I went to go back and play it. But I have been playing the Time Crisis games very heavily, and you're going to see why here shortly. So, very Trojan horse pickup there, and then that led to me finding a copy of Time Crisis 3 to complete the big box later on, and really enjoy this game. This is a great, very accurate GunCon 2 game for the PS2. I re-hooked a PS2 up to my CRT TV, which I hadn't had one hooked up to that TV for years. So I've actually been playing GunCon and GunCon 2 games, kind of going through my PS1 and PS2 library. And honestly, if I complete my GunCon subset, I might make a video on that. There's a couple more games I need for, I think, PS1 and PS2. But if I end up getting all those, that's another future video I might be able to make. But can't really recommend this one enough. I like the pacing in it. It has the nice, action button feature that's part of the gun that you use to play it, and really plays quite well. I played a little Time Crisis in the arcades, but they didn't really stand out, but I definitely am into the series now. And then I also got the final of the 3 Time Crisis games that came out to PS2. This is Time Crisis Crisis Zone. This one I expected to be even better because I think it was the final of the 3 games, but honestly Time Crisis 3 holds up a lot better than this one. This one just has a very different pace to the game, and I just think they kind of go a little overboard on some of the enemies. The difference with this one is you kind of have like a auto-fire machine gun versus one that you have to reload constantly. So they really cram on the enemies, but it doesn't do the game any favors. So don't recommend this one as much, but again, just kind of fun to be playing all these light gun games on a CRT TV, which I hadn't for a long, long time. So next we'll move on to some PS3 games. I got 2 games for that system, which is a system I hardly ever buy for. This is the No More Heroes version that came out for this system. This game is much better known on the Wii, and I noticed that the PS3 version is starting to take off in price, so I figured I better grab this before it's too late. I haven't dug into this yet, so I don't know if it's better or worse than the Wii version. I know the Wii requires the Wiimote and a lot of wagging to play it. This one has PS3 Move controller support, which I don't even own those. But if it plays alright with the DualShock 3, then I'll check it out with that. Again, you can let me know in the comments if this game is worth playing on the PS3 or if the Wii version's better, and I may or may not keep or sell it. We'll see. So we'll go with that. The other little subset I finished on the PS3 is this weird concept of these Blu-ray and game combo packs where they would give you a actual movie and then the PS3 version of the game all in one Blu-ray disc. So this is the Days of Thunder pack. I have no interest in Days of Thunder, be it the movie or probably even this game, but I just think this was a really cool idea that didn't take off, that you get the motion picture as well as the game on one disc. I don't know if Tom Cruise had like a big stake in this because he's obviously in this movie, and then the other game that's in the subset is a Top Gun game, which it's obviously another Tom Cruise vehicle, so until they make like a Magnolia pack, I'm probably not going to be interested in playing these, but very strange that these existed, and also I think it's getting a little bit difficult to find, so happy to get those. Maybe there's another one out there, but I think that was it. I want to say there was like a third one that was planned, but maybe canceled. Maybe I'm completely wrong about that. It's been a long time since I read about it. And then I got one game for the PS4. This is a somewhat newer release. This came out last year, I think. This is the Samurai Shodown reboot for PS4. And TG Appileus mentioned this in his most recent video, and it kind of jogged my memory that I wanted to check this out. I just didn't want to pay $60 for it. Lo and behold, GameStop is blowing this out for $15 now. And I would say this was probably a new copy that they just sold as used because it's in excellent shape. I did play this quite a bit this month, but I just kind of at a loss on what I think about it. It's almost too polished. I'm just so used to those classic Samurai Shodown games that it feels so weird to be playing one in complete high definition with a lot of advanced moveset and obviously the slow-paced but very highly technical gameplay the series is known for. So interested to play this a little bit more. It's got a ton of just like side modes and things like that, so if this is a game that could really keep you busy if you were into it. I just haven't really made up my mind yet if this is the one for me. So to be determined on that. Alright, so that is all the Sony stuff I got. Like I said, it was a lot. We're going to move on to a mix of stuff I got for other systems, and I would say, while I didn't get a lot of games for these systems, I got a pretty big variety of systems this month. So the first one of these I got is another game for my Neo Geo CD collection. This is Ghost Pilots, and this is one of the very few vertical shooters for the system. It was a very early Neo Geo arcade game from 1991 that came out to the Neo Geo CD several years later, so if you're expecting like top quality Neo Geo graphics, this probably isn't the one for you, but I would say this game is heavily influenced by Raiden, which, if I think back to the arcade history, came out about 1 year prior and was obviously very popular. Plays very similar with the side-to-side scrolling stages while you're scrolling up, up screen. The bombs are very similar, the pace of the game. It doesn't actually have an auto-fire button, so it just kind of feels weird to be playing a Neo Geo shooter where you have to jam on the button the whole time you're playing it, but I like the game. I mean, I think it's very good, well executed for what it's trying to do, and if you take it in mind that it's an early Neo Geo arcade title, it holds up pretty well. And then I got one game for the TurboGrafx 16. This is one that I've wanted for a while. I remember watching a video on it about a year ago and being interested, and that is Silent Debuggers with this very traditionally weird TurboGrafx 16 art. The Japanese PC Engine version of this has excellent artwork. I almost bought that one instead just because I think the art is so cool. It's very different than this. But either way you go, this game is very text heavy, and so that's one of the reasons I went with the US version. But this game is creepy as hell. It uses sound effects to just really max effectiveness on this game to create a very creepy environment throughout the stages. You're playing in these very weird, like kind of first-person RPG-ish tunnels, but the way that the sensor detects the bugs that are essentially trying to kill you in every way, shape, and form is very useful, and that it has that sonar effect to help you determine where in the stages the enemies are. Really just has a nice just undertone of sound to it, and looking forward to playing this a little bit more. I got into it instantly just by plugging it in. I think this game would not be for everyone. It's not a very beginner-friendly game, but if you take the time to learn what it's really trying to institute with all the different gameplay options and different weapons, it's a pretty deep gameplay experience for an early TurboGrafx game, so can highly recommend that one. Let's move on to a Sega Genesis title. So this is one that I upgraded over the month. I had a boxed copy of this for several years, and that was for Streets of Rage 3. So now I have a complete copy. Unfortunately, with Sega Genesis collecting, it is so hard to find just the manuals that sometimes you're better off, in this case, to rebuy the whole game complete and then sell off your boxed copy and make most of your money back. So that's my intent with this one. This is in excellent condition. It's even better than my other one was. It has the hang tab on it for the hang tab police, but it has a nice complete manual, has the original Sega advertisement insert inside of it, and the cartridge is in really good shape too. Obviously, Streets of Rage 3 is getting a little bit more buzz right now because of Streets of Rage 4, and then this is also the notorious entry in the series. It was heavily edited from the Japanese version. I actually own the Japanese Mega Drive version, Bare Knuckle 3 as well, so it's very interesting to compare and contrast all the changes they made with this one, but it's a pretty difficult game to find overall for the Genesis. I think the series had lost a lot of its steam, and people just really weren't buying these as much as they were for Part 1 and 2. So very happy to have a nice clean copy of this, and it completes my series of 1, 2, and 3 that they're all complete now. So very happy to be done with that. Let's move on to some other systems that I just bought one game each for. So I got another GameCube racing game that I've never played called Pro Rally, and this was just very cheap from that game store closing sale. I noticed this one's going up in price a bit. I'm going to give it a try. If I like it, I'll keep it. If I don't like it, it is going to be sold off very soon. But I don't have high hopes for it. There's a few rally racing games for the GameCube, and none of them seem to be very good. The one that is the really difficult one to find, Rally Championship, I also own, and that game is absolutely terrible. So if this one's better than that, that would be a win, but again, I can't really hope for too much. I do like the Peugeot on the cover, though, I will say that. And then another game that I've had an interesting adventure with is Automode ELISA for the Xbox. So this game came out multi-platform on PS2, GameCube, and Xbox, and I've owned the GameCube version for quite a while, actually. But I noticed that's another one that is really shooting up in price lately, and I figured I would actually like to own this on the Xbox instead. If games like of this generation are multi-platform, I typically prefer them on the Xbox. Just they tend to look a little bit better because you can count on, you know, whatever the graphical boost of the Xbox giving them a little bit of a perk. So I'm actually going to sell off my GameCube version, and if this one is as good as I'm hoping it is, I will stick with this. But this one actually I think is interesting because they didn't all come out at the same time, so they staggered the releases. I think the PS2 version came out first, then the GameCube version came out. It was a little bit enhanced over that, and then the Xbox version came out quite a bit after that. And frankly, I don't think anybody cared at that point. The series didn't take off the way they thought it would, and I think this Xbox version is actually going to be one of the harder to find Xbox games in the future. So I would recommend getting this if you're interested in kind of unique Xbox games, or maybe games that had a little bit more, you know, discussion on other platforms and then just happened to make it to the Xbox also. But happy to get that in the collection for that reason. And then I got one game for the DS. This is another one that I got at that sale, and I was really intending to sell this off, but I might keep it. This is Resident Evil Deadly Silence for the DS, and this is a game that I used to see absolutely everywhere, but all of a sudden this one's really expensive too. So what I didn't realize about this is I think it's a remake of the first Resident Evil on PS1, so that actually perked my interest a little bit more than thinking it was a new game in the series, which I've kind of lost interest in. So I will try this out on the DS and see what I think, and kind of go from there whether I'm going to keep it or not. I actually got a game for the N64 this month. This is super strange because it's a system that I hardly ever buy for, and it is in the box, and it is Space Station Silicon Valley. This is the game that was one of the very early releases by DMA, or Doesn't Mean Anything, the developer, who later went on to create the Grand Theft Auto series, which obviously blew up and, you know, took the world by storm. This one I've always heard is kind of a unique game for the N64. I don't know if it's going to be to my taste, but I figured I would try it out and see if I like it. So it was nice to get a box copy of this. I figured I might as well go ahead and jump on it. It was one of those local sales. So I'm going to go ahead and play this and see what I think, and determine whether I want to go further with this one. Another thing I got in one of those sales is just a box, but it's one for a game that I really like on the Super Nintendo, and that is for Super Turrican. This one and its sequel, Super Turrican II, I think are great action shooters for the system. So happy to get a box for this. Hopefully I can find a manual for it. I still need the manual on this one, and I can make a nice complete copy of this. The box is in pretty decent shape. It's got a little smushing on the cover, but overall it's not too bad considering how old it is. So happy to add that to the collection. That is all the games I got for the month. I also got some accessories. So this was like a month where I had a lot more time to play games. I was digging out old systems. I was looking for what things I had accessories for and so forth, and it also inspired some extra purchases. So the first thing I got as a result of all that GunCon game playing is something that I didn't know I needed, and that is the Sony PlayStation multi-out adapter. This is a first-party separate accessory that you need to play GunCon games if you're trying to use a CRT TV with either component cables for the PS2 or S-Video for PS1 or PS2, or, God forbid, an RF adapter. You will need this adapter to play GunCon games on a CRT. The only reason you would not need this adapter is if you were using the standard composite cables, but why would you do that? Because they look terrible. So what this thing does is it enables you to plug in the yellow video out from the GunCon 1 or 2 into this separate plug on the side of this adapter. And then what you do at the edge and the other end is you plug your component or S-Video or RF into this side, plug this side into the system, and it acts as a pass-through while also enabling the composite yellow AV out that you need to play the GunCon games. So this is a interesting adapter. This was originally released in gray for the PS1. I think this one came out a little later for the PS2 in black. It's the exact same part. You can use them compatibly with either system. But I've also read that this lets you have some other options. So it does have an S-Video in on the side as well as composite in on this side. And I heard that if you plug in additional inputs into those and then still use the pass-through, you can actually display your PS1 or PS2 on multiple screens at the same time. I don't really know why I would want to do that, but it's very nice to have the option, and I think that was kind of forward-looking that Sony enabled that. So maybe it was intended for like demo systems or whatnot, but kind of cool to have a multi-display option that comes with this adapter as well. I think in Europe they included this with the GunCon boxes, but they never did that in the US, so you always had to buy this as a separate adapter. I was able to get a used one on eBay, and I'm all good to go now. Works great. Another thing I did from playing all these PS2 games is I started pulling out some DualShock 2s from storage, and all of a sudden 2 of my DualShock 2s no longer work. So kind of disappointed that my original black one doesn't work, and then my silver one doesn't work that matches my PS2 Slim system. But through one of those local game store sales, I was able to get some nice clean DualShock 2s, which are also getting a little difficult to find with everyone, tracking down controllers now. So I got a nice clear blue version. I don't know what the technical color is for this one, but it's nice looking. And then I also got a clear black one. Again, I don't know what the technical term is for this color, but these are at least slightly interesting variations on the norm, and both of these play great. So I'm going to stick around and hoard a few of these PS2 controllers, because apparently they're starting to die, and it was very strange because I didn't do anything wrong to them. So we'll see what happens. And then the very last thing I got this month is a controller I never owned before, so I'm looking forward to checking this out. This is the Wii Classic controller, and it's the second variation that comes with the side handles. The original one was just round, and then it's also the variation that comes in black, because I think they originally came out in white. So nice to have one of these finally, to just play some of the Wii games with a more comfortable controller for some of the games that don't require waggling and things like that. So this will be definitely a nice addition to the Wii collection. Something I should have owned years ago, but again, now I have a little bit more time to dig in and play some of this stuff. So going to be playing with this very shortly. So again, thank you very much for watching. I know this one was a little bit of a longer video, but I had some more interesting stuff to show than I did the last couple months. Please take a moment, like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think, and I will talk to you soon. Have a great day or night, wherever you are.